Today we're here with Brent Carstensen of Camanche. Brent is the head coach of the Camanche High School. He was their last state champion coming out of there in 1987, and last year was inducted into the school's Hall of Fame. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Big things going on this year still. How are you staying busy and spending your days? Or how were you spending your days prior to school starting with the COVID?
I got little ones. I had a second going of family, so I have a 5- and 7-year-old that have kept me busy, or not busy, whichever way you want to look at it. I don't know.
Any opportunity to get with the wrestlers, get any off-season workouts in?
We started off, once everything released, what was that, July 1st, we got notification we could start coming in the room. We started having open rooms. I'm not certain how to qualify what we were doing, but I was having 5 to 7 kids come in on Mondays and Wednesdays and smell the room, I think is what my intent was. Smell the room and look at each other and remember that we got something big to do in the fall. But then COVID hit our baseball team. Our kids went off to camp. We got back. I got 1 or 2 kids show up twice after they got back from camp. And then COVID hit our football team. So there was another 14-day quarantine. And then football was started. And luckily I have, if I have 20 kids out, I got 18 of them doing a fall sport. So I'm hands off, and we'll have, once we get into the roll of things here with the season or with the school year, we'll be offering some opportunity for them to at least, again, get in and smell the room and look at each other. But I know a few of them have been going down, especially Kincaid, going down to Young Gun still. So,
sure.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of your guys going down to different rooms, working out, and also Everson. I see posts every once in a while. Him just crushing the weights. So he's looking great.
He's a beast.
So, Coach, wanted to start kind of at the beginning, if you don't mind, of your starting the sport. When did you start getting involved in wrestling, and kind of how did that happen?
Well, my dad was a college wrestler. If you asked him, I probably was on mats. Like first time they took me to anywhere when I was a baby. So my first memories are he was assistant coach at University of Dubuque when I was 3, and I remember being in the locker room, being in the wrestling room at 3, and then he was a high school wrestling coach when I was in 1st grade, and I remember getting some matches because other coaches would have kids my age. So all of a sudden he'd be like, "Hey, by the way, you're wrestling," and then junior wrestling kicked in 2nd grade, and it's just always been, I think I had a couple years off in my 20s where I was away from the sport, but it's been pretty constant for all the other years of my life.
Sure. Did you do, when you were young, did you do any off-season wrestling? Did you freestyle and Greco?
I didn't. I probably did 3-4 non-season tournaments. I wasn't that good. So I don't think my dad took me around too much because I don't know. We didn't really do anything out of the ordinary other than just always keep it in our blood and on our mind. But the activity-wise, it was different back in the 70s too. So I'm in my 50s, so it was different back in the 70s.
Sure. There weren't like a lot of clubs and stuff like that going on.
There were. I found out, like, I had some teammates in high school, Full-Sang boys. They were on the Iowa freestyle and Iowa Greco teams, and they were traveling and doing that stuff. And I didn't really get aware of that was an option until 8th, 9th grade. And it just wasn't in my life pattern to even be around that stuff.
Sure. Well, I know you said you weren't that good, but you in time became pretty good. I mean, you were a state champion in high school. At what point did you see your career path kind of changing?
I think it was the confidence part. Looking back, I was probably a lot better than I thought I was.
Sure.
And I can remember one tournament where, kind of a growing tournament in 8th grade, where kids that you have the the bullies and you have the kids that are popular and you got all that and you're trying to fit in when you're 12, 13 years old. So I remember going to a tournament and I beat some of the kids that everybody else in school thought was cool. And I think that might have been a spark. That might have been a spark because all of a sudden it's like everybody's looking at me like, you're not supposed to beat him. And I'm like, I just did.
Yeah, yeah.
So, who were some of your role models growing up, and who influenced your style of wrestling?
I don't know if I ever had a style. I don't know if there was any influences. Being that I was in a family of wrestlers, and we knew Dan Gable, and identifying with wrestling in particular was just something that was just always on the back of your mind. And there was, I can't look back and say Rico Chiapparelli or any of those Bannock boys, or, I was aware that they were wrestlers, and I remember going to the meets, and I think the ice cream was more important to me than the meet itself. But it was just always in the back burner, always something that was I identified as. I remember having the T-shirts that said "Better to have wrestled and lost than to ever play basketball," and that's just a lifestyle. Whether there wasn't anybody in particular that I looked up to.
Growing up in the Camanche Clinton area, did you ever get a chance to work out? I know, like around your time frame in high school, the Knight brothers were at Clinton.
Yeah, Danny and I were the same age.
Okay.
We still are, actually.
Sure. Did you guys ever get together for like a collaborative practice or anything like that back then?
We wrestled so many junior tournaments growing up. Our high school coach had his junior program, and again, the world was different in the 70s, but we would have like every Tuesday night, we'd come in and pair up in the bleachers and what do you weigh, go wrestle, and we would have Clinton Camanche a lot of, and our numbers were just huge back then. And Northeast would come and DeWitt kids would come, and we'd have it all done. Everybody get 3 matches and long green and red lines up your sleeve or up your arm. And so we interacted with Clinton a lot that way as youth. Once we got into high school, we were the competition. We wanted to pound our chest bigger than they could pound their chest. And I think that's the way we looked at it. So back, our mindsets weren't so much let anybody in our room, because we owned that room, and go to anybody else's room. Well, we were beneath that to go to somebody else's room. So times have changed now, and it was different.
Sure. You mentioned Northeast. Was Jay Zymet involved in any of those workouts ever?
I'm sure he was. I remember Full Sangs and him. There was Dan too, but it's 33 years ago, so it all kind of scrambles together in my brain. But yeah, the names are still there. I remember.
That was a lot of years ago, and to this day, I still question if in between periods you didn't switch Greg and Matt Fulsang on me, because I was dead tired at the end of the matches.
Well, side note, Matt and Greg were my next door neighbors on one side, and Randy and Roger Vogel were my next door neighbors on the other side. So we got a lot of stories about stupid crap that they did growing up. So switching would not be one of them. I would not argue you if you tried to say they did it.
Did the Fulsangs, that family end up in the Maquoketa area? I remember some Fulsangs around Maquoketa too. Is that?
Yeah, they have relatives up in Maquoketa. Yep. Pretty good wrestlers. They're DeWitt or origin DeWitt with the Fulsang. So some of them would have moved north, and some of them would have been south to Camanche.
I can tell by just some of your stories already. You've probably forgotten more about wrestling than I may ever know. But I just wanted to ask, how has the sport changed or evolved kind of since you started in it?
More live wrestling, a lot more live wrestling. It's a pretty basic sport. You can't just say these last 50 years that I've been on the planet. There's, thousands of years before that. It's a pretty basic sport. And as far as change, I've been at Camanche. This is my 21st year at Camanche. I've seen things come and go, like for popularity, like the Easton tilt. I'm sure 5 years from now it'll be gone, and there's been other things that have came and went that were popular. But for the most part, just the little things with weigh-ins and singlets and simple rule changes now with the hair and The parents, I would say the parents have changed the most. Before, the parents just sent you there, and if you lost, oh shucks, and now they show up and they stay with you there, and then they're on your kid's butt if they lost. And that's what I sense has changed the most.
Coach, growing up, I mean, your dad was was he the first state champion at Camanche?
No,
or was
there were
okay.
two before him. There were two before him.
However, your
Actually,
dad.
there was one before him, and then one a few years after him.
Okay. So your dad and you were the only father-son combo. So your dad had won a state championship. Was it about 21 years later, you had won your state championship as a senior.
Yep.
Was it ever hard, wrestling in what I would call them shadows, or, wrestling some of his ghosts? Because people are saying, well, Joe, right?
Yep.
Joe was a state champion. His boy's going to be right there with him. Did you ever have any issues, like, I was going to say, more wrestling his ghosts than your opponent?
He did an excellent job. He didn't have high expectations. He let it go. He wasn't the one that pushed me. He didn't come and, he was just always there. And any demons that I would have had would have only been because other people talked about him being a wrestler. And any demons I would have had wouldn't have been pressure from them. It would have been internal demons that I would have had to battle with. Can I be good too?
That's a common thing that I've kind of heard from a lot of guys who have had successful parents in the sport, or mostly dads, but soon I guess we'll have some kids whose moms were really successful too. But it's a lot of the time when a parent has had success, they don't necessarily put the pressure on the kid. That's usually, unfortunately, it seems like it's from people who maybe haven't had that kind of success, and I don't want to say live through their kids, but have a little bit of a different, they haven't necessarily won it themselves, so they have a little bit different perspective, I think, than the guys who have, maybe.
Absolutely. Vicariously or accidentally wanting their kid to achieve more than they did, and accidentally putting pressure that didn't need to be there.
Sure.
So maybe I'd be telling a different story if I'd have lost in the finals, but at this point I was fortunate enough to win in the finals, and I don't feel like he ever pressured me. So.
Sure.
Hey, Coach, can we talk about that match? I mean, you were down by a point or so with not much time left, and I didn't get to see the move because the house erupted. And it was just so anyone knows, it was Old Veterans, the barn where you wrestled, right? Yeah. The house erupted. Everyone stood up, and I wasn't very tall, so I never even I knew something happened. I had to look up on the board to see what happened. So, can you take us through that last? Last 30 seconds of the match and till the point when you got your arm raised?
Got the initial takedown. Then Danny Knight got his pin. I remember being distracted a little bit on that. Then the other guy, Messerly, came back and scored about 7 unanswered points on me. And then I came back, and with 27 seconds, he got called for a warning. No, with like a minute left, he got called for a warning for stalling. 30 seconds left, he got a second call for stalling. I got a point. I was down 9-7, and got a restart somehow with 12 seconds left. And he was dumb enough to stand up with his outside knee, and I hit him with a cradle and held him there till the clock ran out.
It was incredible. I remember the crowd just went nuts. I mean, it was like back to back. Danny got his fourth title, and then this guy was, I'll call it what it was. He was stalling out on you. He was bailing out, and when you caught him, the crowd went crazy. So,
yeah, excited. I beat him the year before, 12-4, but the secret is I didn't know that till about a year ago. I beat him at state to figure out who goes for 3rd and 4th or who goes for 5th and 6th. And I didn't realize that I beat him 12-4 for however many years since. So,
Coach, wanted to ask, there's been a few coaches I know around here who have done the same, something similar, but what was it like returning to coach at your alma mater?
I don't know if it was ever not in my mind that it was just going to happen. first I went off and moved down south where in Houston inner city, and there wasn't wrestling. And I got lucky and walked into the right school at the right time to apply for a football job. And they said, well, our principal's from Indiana and she'd like to have a wrestling team. She's already bought the mats and the singlets. I'm like, what? So for 2 years in Houston, I started a program and moved back here and was over in Fulton teaching. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get a phone call at Camanche, and they asked me if I wanted a job here, and I said, sure. Wrestling wasn't actually something that, it wasn't the reason I came here, but they said, oh, and by the way, there's assistant wrestling job open. I'm like, all right. And then I got here, and the guy that was the head coach, Dan Francescan, left after a year. And I get a phone call out of the blue that says, hey, do you want the head job, right? I said, yep. So I think it was something that I always just thought was going to be, but I just lucked into it. Divine intervention got me here.
That's great. And I know a lot of Camanche people are happy for it. So.
Well, I hope so. I'd love to have young blood. I'd love to have somebody to hand the baton to. And I have a 7-year-old boy that I plan on graduating him from Camanche. And, if I'm here, I'm here. But I'd love to have that youth here. And we haven't been fortunate enough in our school system to hire wrestling background people. So if we could do that, the first day they hire somebody with a wrestling background, I'm going to go have a real serious conversation with that guy.
I think Bryce Everson just graduated. I don't know what his career path is, but there's a former Indian.
Business and financing, but he says he's going to have his coaching certificate and be in the room this year with us because his hours will line up for him to be able to do that.
Awesome. Very good.
So, Coach, what are some of the biggest obstacles you've had to overcome as a wrestler or as a coach?
Maybe it's my personality. I don't really see obstacles that much, and that sounds so, it sounds, I don't know, cliche, but I suppose looking back, some of the obstacles have been numbers problems. There was one year I remember I only had like 16 kids in the room total, and not a single one of them had a parent that they went home to that ever wrestled. And I do remember that. So you're sending kids home with no parental knowledge on what actual holding weight is overnight. Not even cutting weight. I'm just talking about holding weight overnight, and hoping that the program stays together and you have some success. And I'd say top of my head comes out is, those moments where I'm working with a blank slate here.
Oh yeah. I remember talking to nothing against some moms, but moms where the boys or the kids went home on weight, and they came back to a practice the next day like a pound and a half over. They're like, what happened? He's like, oh, my mom made me drink this water because the water doesn't have any calories in it.
Yep. I've seen that way too many times. There's way too many stories about that, and I will not over-parent. I will not coach over a parent. So, there's a lot of times where I just got to shake my head and tell the kid, talk to the kid and say, hey, here's what we need you to do. But I'm never going to say, your mom should have never told you that.
I had to teach a couple moms, 12 hours or less, a pound is a pound is a pound.
Pound is a pound, yeah. That's it. That's right there. A pound is a pound is a pound is a pound.
You can have ice cream a pound, or you can have water for a pound, but you only get a pound.
Exactly.
Coach, looking back on your career, is there a coach or maybe a mentor that sticks out as maybe like a real influential, part of your past?
Yeah, just my dad. Coming home to, he'd just make a statement and walk away. And it was never like a rip, cut down, you sucked at this. It was more of a, hey, why don't you try that and walk away. And so, that's just, I would say, my people that I looked up to are my teammates. I probably never wrestled to win. I always wrestled because my team was so good I didn't want to be the jerk that lost. So when it came to practice time, I always wanted to do what they were doing or better because I didn't want to be the one that wasn't. And our girls were pretty dang talented in my grade. So our boys benefited from the huge talent that our girls had, because even in PE class in third grade, you didn't want to lose in battle ball. You didn't want to come in second in the 600-yard dash because girls were beating you. And you know, it was again the 70s, but our girls were so athletic and talented and driven that it raised all of us.
Coach, you've had a lot of successful wrestlers come out of your program into the college ranks yourself. And the question I have is, what advice do you give to the high school wrestlers who would like to make that next leap or make it to the college level?
Well, I'm assuming some of them are listening that have graduated, and some of them are listening that are in Camanche. Again, I don't coach over parents, but I think there's a disconnect here a little bit, football, basketball, wrestling, where we don't communicate D1 as an option. Everybody kind of bows and says, well, you try this route, and it's always lower so that they can get more years in of wrestling. And I wish we had more D1. I guess I'm losing track of your original question, but I wish we had more D1 thoughts and more D1 desires and had the confidence that you could try D1. So as far as having kids that went on to wrestle, I give them the confidence and make the comments that say, hey, are you going to wrestle in college? You got enough talent. I got a couple kids that are in college right now that probably could walk into the room this fall and the wrestling coach, and he'd find a spot. Eric Campy, Nate Tomes, good enough. No, they're both attempting other sports in college, but no, I wish we had more kids think of themselves as D1, give it a chance. Don't like it, drop back to JUCO.
I like it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think you see a whole lot of kids from our area end up going D3, and I, never having wrestled in college myself, I look at a lot of kids, I'm like, that kid could go D1. I wonder if they just don't think so, or they just, like you said, maybe they know they can go into D3 and maybe wrestle all 4 years in the lineup, maybe. But
yeah, I don't know. Who knows what's going to develop? I have daughters, and I try to plant that seed at the same time. I'm like, you know, there's a real filter of talent. And when you go to a D1, there's spots on a softball team that an average high school girl that has drive is going to fall into and have. Same thing with wrestling. You find the right D1 college and you have the right drive, you might fall into, with coaching and maturity, you might fall into a spot and all of a sudden go, wow.
How about, I know you said you have a lot of football players or kids involved in fall sports, which is great. That's ideal in my mind. But how about some advice for the wrestlers on making sure they're ready for this upcoming season?
Come in the room, smell it a couple times, do stuff go to camps go to a camp or two in the summer. When the corn cob, when those fall tournaments come around, start getting the mindset that you're going to show up to one of those. The really driven kids like Derek Kincaid, he's going to find a way to go to that. He took Fargo off last year. He took some tournaments off last year, and Eric, you might be second guessing yourself, but I think you did okay. But just keep that in the back burner of your mind, because the season's a pretty grueling season, and I tend to steer away from having a kid go to football practices and cross country practices and then try to get them in the room 2-3 times a week and drive them, and then all of a sudden run into a season that's every 10 out of 12 weekends in a row and every night, and we do Saturday practices and cutting weight and get them showed up to practice the first day in fairly good mindset and physical shape, and then we can worry about February when it gets there, because we can build for the next 12 weeks.
Hey, Coach, this past year, come about late December, mid-December, you were turning a lot of heads. Your program was just coming along really strong. You have a really, really strong upcoming class. Can you talk a little bit about the past season and what it looks like for you guys coming up this season.
Yeah, last year, thanks for the compliment, but last year we had a real good team. I wish the pairings and the coaches' votes to get dual state would have favored us better, because we end up getting slammed right into West Delaware, and I think we're a better team than to end up with the #1 team in state 2 years in a row. And I don't know what our chances would have been if we could have been tied into a 5, 6, 7 seeded team, and if we could have matched up right and beat them and got out to Des Moines. But yeah, we have a real good team last year. We lost 2 seniors. One was below 500. He did fill a spot for us. He did great. He showed up for practice. He was a positive influence on the team. But I think we can replace somebody at his spot. Ben Vogel's a tough one. He was a state qualifier. He's going to be a tough one to fill, but we are lucky enough to have a couple sophomores that I think are going to jump in, and they might be chomping at a chance at districts, and with a little bit of luck and all kinds of other crazy stuff, you never know. They all have a chance. Everybody's bad luck happens and everybody's good luck happens, and if it all lines up, maybe you're through to Des Moines. So I got a couple sophomores that I think are going to fill in around where Ben was. So everybody else is just getting more mature, bigger, stronger. And yeah, we have kids on the team. You said we're turning heads, and there's 2 or 3 kids on the team that weren't involved in that head turning, and they should have been. So this is the best team Camanche's had in 33 years. And I really hope our season happens.
It'll happen. It'll happen. We're super optimistic. I have been the whole time. It's going to happen. Be ready for it.
Yep.
Well, Coach, we look forward to watching you guys. It's exciting stuff. Our next part, we call it our OT sudden death questions. Most of them, in fact, have something to do with wrestling, but some of them don't have anything to do with it at all. So,
All right.
First one does a little bit. Do you have a favorite wrestling movie?
Oh, just your typical, anything that's wrestling, I'll watch it. I'm not going to say, no, I don't have a favorite wrestling movie. I actually was in a movie that had wrestling in it when I coached in Houston. Rushmore with Bill Murray has a wrestling scene in it. It's my old wrestling team. So I would say, if anything, my favorite wrestling movie is Rushmore, only because it's me and my team wrestling as extras in the movie.
I'm going to look that up. I'm going to look that up tonight.
You see me in the orange pants.
Very cool.
All right, golfing or fishing?
Fishing.
You guys are right off the Mississippi. That should be an easy one, right?
Favorite wrestling match of all time?
The next one.
The greatest Olympic wrestler of all time.
It's Dan Gable, but I got to give props to our Iowa State guy, Cale Sanderson. But Dan Gable, unscored upon. You got to respect that.
Absolutely. Favorite food, and then when we come up to Camanche to watch a meet, where should we go to dinner after?
My favorite food's lasagna, and probably Buffalo Wild Wings.
I like that. I'm gonna also hit that. What is it? Is it Hunter's up there?
Oh, I should have said that. There's Hunter's and there's Hunter's Bar and Grill in Lowmore, and then there's Hunter's over in Fulton, Illinois, between Fulton and Thompson.
All right, I'm gonna hit that up. They're supposed to have good food on Tuesday nights. I think it's like a shrimp boil or something. So, all right, Coach. Favorite football team?
The Bears, but I'm a Texans fan too. So if it was a Texan Bears Super Bowl, I wouldn't really know who to choose.
Favorite vacation destination?
Somewhere warm. Vegas, probably.
Who are you gonna bet on when you're down in Vegas? Or what table would we see at?
I was down there for the Randy Couture and the Brock Lesnar fight on my 40th birthday. So I don't even remember if I lost money or not, but it was a good night. I bet on horses all night long and lost every time. And then the next morning I bet on long shot and I withdrew the bet, and then the long shot won and I could have had all my money.
Oh, no. All right, we come to our final question, Coach. Favorite quote that describes you or your purpose?
I got little things that I say all the time, but I've met a lot of people, and this is a backhanded compliment, and I don't know how wrestling it is, but it is. I met a lot of people who played basketball and wish they'd wrestle. I've never met a wrestler who wished they'd ever played basketball.
There you go. That's a top.
I like it. I like it.
All right. Coach Carstensen, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. You have some great insights, and we look forward to seeing Camanche Indians tearing it up this next year.
It should be great. I got 7 kids at state. Let's call it right now.
All right. We'll be looking for it. We'll have a Sunday post party.
All right.
All right. Thanks again.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this podcast with your friends. Give us a like and a follow on Facebook and Twitter at QCA Wrestle. And keep an eye out for more QCA wrestling content coming soon.